We're meeting today to talk about the United States Secret Service and the accountability for the March 14th, 2015 incident. On March 14th, two senior Secret Service special agents, one had the title of Deputy Special Agent in Charge, the Presidential Protective Detail, that's Mr. Conley, and the other one had a title of Assistant to the Special Agent in Charge for the Washington Field Office. That would be Mr. George Ogilvie. The allegation and the concern was that they drove through a criminal scene investigation of a potential bomb at the White House. Following the incident, there were allegations that the two agents were intoxicated after being at a bar downtown for a retirement party. Most concerning, however, was the allegation neither agent was given a sobriety test, nor were the agents reprimanded in any way. Part of the concern was what happened in this potential bomb scene, and what did they do about it? What did the supervisors know? When did they know it? And how did they report it up the chain of command? Instead, everyone involved was told to go home and pretend like nothing happened. To get a better sense of what happened on March 4th, Ranking Member Cummings and I met with Secret Service Director Clancy. Director Clancy could not answer our questions. Next, Mr. Cummings and I scheduled a public hearing on the incident. At the hearing, Director Clancy said he could not answer the questions. Instead, he deferred to the Department of Homeland Security Office of Inspector General, who was investigating the matter. That investigation is now complete. We're pleased to have Mr. Roth here with us today to talk about the conclusions of that investigation. Now that the facts are in, it is time for accountability. The Inspector General determined it was more likely than not both agents, Conley and Ogilvie's judgment, was impaired by alcohol. Since the sobriety test wasn't given to either agent the night of March 4th, the Inspector General came to the conclusion based on the facts. These included both Conley and Ogilvie spent 5 hours in a bar running up a bar tab that included 14 drinks after 2 hours of an open bar. And the objective behavior of the two experienced Secret Service agents who should have known better. The agents' impaired judgment resulted in them driving, and I quote, into a crime scene inches from what the rest of the Secret Service was treating as a potential explosive device, and which, under different circumstances, could have been. Let me read that quote again. Sorry for the disruption. The agent's impaired judgment resulted in them driving into what I quote from the report, into a crime scene inches from what the rest of the Secret Service was treating as a potential explosive device, and which, under different circumstances, could have endangered their own lives and those of the uniformed division officers responding, end quote. If that had been true, if it had been a real bomb, these agents would have been lucky to be alive. They were endangering the lives of too many people by doing what they had done. Following the incident, the story of the incident began making its way up the chain of command, where it eventually reached Mr. Conley himself, for you see, he is in the chain of command. Though required to report what happened, Mr. Conley chose not to. Mr. Conley even met with his boss, Special Agent in Charge Robert Buster, on March 6th to talk about the suspicious package incident, but made no mention of being involved with the incident himself. Mr. Ogilvie, likewise, had a duty to self-report and chose not to. As the Inspector General found, their failure to report, quote, reflects either poor judgment or an affirmative desire to hide their activities, end quote. Relying on the honor system for reporting this type of egregious misconduct does not work when agents do not act honorably. Senior uniformed division leaders also violated their duty to report by failing to inform Mr. Conley's boss, the head of the Presidential Protective Division. Perhaps the situation would have been dealt with earlier if the agents were given breathalyzer tests that night. An officer on the scene told the Inspector General the watch commander decided not to administer a breathalyzer to Mr. Conley and Mr. Ogilvie because he was worried to do so would be a, quote, career killer, end quote. The watch commander was probably right. Additionally, as the Inspector General stated, the watch commander's decision was likely influenced by the, quote, Secret Service reputation for punishing or ignoring those who would further investigate or report violations, end quote, such as drunk driving. And that is why the problems that led to this incident extend well beyond March 4th, 2015. It is one of the ongoing concerns that the deep-seated cultural problems within the Secret Service are pervasive, and they continue. We have thousands of good men and women who serve this country honorably and patriotically. We appreciate them, but they are not above the law. The Secret Service has to abide by the law as well. We've heard over and over again the source of morale problems within the Secret Service is that senior personnel are treated differently from the rank and file, and that the uniform division is treated differently from the agents. We have little doubt that because of this disparate treatment, Conley and Ogilvy believed they could act in a way where they would be able to get away with it. The culture of special treatment for senior agents must stop. It's an embarrassing and highly concerning pattern of misconduct and security incidents that need to end. The Secret Service mission is too important. I want to commend Mr. Roth and his team for their good work on this report. They acted swiftly, they put a lot of people towards it, and it's produced a very worthwhile result, and that's why we're here today. We look forward in the future to hearing from Director Clancy on this incident and learning whether the agency plans to take disciplinary actions against the individuals involved. I have a concern that just retiring or stepping aside doesn't solve the problem, that they don't truly have the consequences that would be associated with such egregious behavior. The job of the Secret Service is too important not to reprimand those who exercise shockingly poor judgment, which could put the President and his family at risk. One of the other things that we're going to explore is how within the Department of Homeland Security, there are different tables of penalties within the department itself. While there's a standard for the Department of Homeland Security, there seems to be a different standard within the Secret Service and other agencies themselves. And yet this is the very reason we formed, one of the reasons we formed the Department of Homeland Security, is to make sure that they got best practices and management together so they could have this uniform across, but it's not. In fact, one of the things that the Inspector General found is that even the most senior people didn't understand what the alcohol policy was. Sort of an important thing to do, and certainly an important thing to understand and know. Again, we appreciate the good work of Mr. Roth, and look forward to a good, vibrant discussion today about his findings from him and his team.